Hey folks, John Kelly. Welcome back to the Law Enforcement Life Coach Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. This podcast is being brought to you by On Target Claims, where their motto is on target from setback to settlement. Now listen, a little background. I've worked with these guys on the job, on the street for over 25 years, man, and they have always done the right thing and have always had my back. Now, in this second chapter, let them have your back. Right? You wouldn't go to court without an attorney. Why would you go up against an insurance company without representation, right? They represent you, the policyholder, when you go up against an insurance company submitting a claim. And I can tell you this, right? From beginning to end, they're going to be with you during the entire process. They're going to properly document that claim with the latest technology. And then when it comes time to getting things fixed, they've got a complete stable of vendors that are certified that are going to get it done right the first time. They also offer a pre-loss planning and policy review. So you know exactly what you're covered for, right? Make sure that you're adequately covered. The time to find out that you're not isn't after that horrific event. Okay? So give my friends a call at On Target Claims, 561-208-1775, or go to their website, ontargetclaims.com. They cover the entire state of Florida, offices in Fort Lauderdale and Tampa, and tell them John sent you. And now, let's get to the episode.
My pleasure.
Hey, folks, John Kelly. Welcome back to the Law Enforcement Life Coach Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. Listen, I got Steve Williams in the house. Now, Steve is a dear friend. I met Steve several years ago. And when you talk about a guy who has had some life experiences, and it's just such a good dude, man. He is an entrepreneur, a CEO, an investor, a builder and developer of corporations, and he's also a musician. And just a hell of he's just so eclectic, man. Such a hell of a nice guy. And we got to talking the other day about health and some things that he was doing to improve his health. And I said, shit, man, this is going to make a great conversation on the podcast. So today we're going to talk about stem cells from the Steve Williams perspective. Brother, it's
Thank
great to see you, man.
It's great to see you. Great to be here. After that introduction, I think I should just pack up and go home.
That's it. It's not going to get any better, bro. It's not
Exactly.
Oh my
Cool.
God. So you for the listener, man, you got a couple years on me, man, but you are more active than most 30-year-olds I know. If you don't mind me throwing out your age, you're 70 now, but
Right.
God damn, man, you haven't slowed down one bit.
Yeah, I was very athletic in my 20s. I went to an old school karate school, and I participated in lots of tournaments, and so I've got that as a background. I did that for a long time, and had a second degree black belt in Ishanryu karate, and competed for a number of years. And even so today, what do? I can't really do the kicks that I used to be able to do. So I box once a week with a professional trainer, and I've got a UFC fighter that I'm involved with, and box and play tennis twice a week, and lift weights a little bit. So yeah, thank God, I'm able to do those things. I think as you get older, it just really becomes critical to diet, health type of issues. Get to be your own health advocate. Get to learn what's missing in your supplementation or your diet routine, and get strength building, resistance, and aerobic exercise is really the way to go. So
that's one thing that really impressed me about you, is that you'll spend hours upon hours upon hours of researching whatever it is that you're trying to find out, whether it's proper blood work, proper vitamins and supplementation. You don't go to one source, man. You scour resources to get as much information as possible about the topic, and then, like a lot of people, you do the opposite. You actually act on it. A lot of people talk about it, but you actually follow through with your findings and your research. And we've been talking because you're still real active. Starting to have a little issues with the back and the hips, and that was a cause of concern for you, and that prompted you to check out some possible solutions.
Exactly. Yeah. So I have issues with my back, my spine. I had an operation on my lower back probably about 12 years ago. It was L5, L4, S1 fusion and laminectomy. Laminectomy means they actually take part of the vertebrae off. It was actually the calcium in my vertebrae was pushing against the spinal
Sure.
column. So, it was very, very painful. And then my hips are shot. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe,
Geez, I don't
back,
know.
back
Fucking
kicking
30
heavy
years of
bag.
kicking
Yeah,
shit.
exactly. Yeah. So the hips are very painful. And so really what resulted was if I was sitting in a chair for more than a couple of minutes and I would stand up, I'd have to stand up slowly. It was very painful. And then I'd have to pause for like 2 seconds to get, I guess, fluid into my hips before I could even take a step. I mean, I felt wobbly. I
You're
felt
like the Tin Man. You're like the Tin Man. Oil
yeah,
can. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, if you pushed me like not even hard, I'd probably go down. So so I said that's got to stop. And then also my neck, I just carried a lot of pain in sort of that upper shoulder, neck area,
Right.
and then sort of like throbbing pain in my lower back, but probably the most notable thing, was the hips. And
Gotcha.
excuse me, and I said to myself, I mean, yeah, I'm 70, but I don't want to feel like I'm 95 or
Right.
105. So what can I do? So I started looking into stem cells, and I did some research on my own. By way of disclaimer, I'm not a doctor. I don't have any medical degrees, but I am an advocate for my personal health, and so I've
Sure.
done a lot of research. I've probably read about 3 books on the subject, and probably listened to hundreds of hours of podcasts. And going back 10 years ago, I listened to a podcast from the Mayo Clinic, and it was a doctor in charge of their regenerative medicine department at Mayo, and he was talking about stem cells to be used with hip arthritis.
Hmm.
And I said, oh gee, this is great, let me get some good information from this. It turns out the podcast was 10 years old,
Wow.
and his summary of their initial trials was very positive, but there was no follow up to the podcast. So it's like, all right, so what happened?
Right.
10 years ago,
Right.
you're saying it looks very promising. I mean, what's the outcome? But
Yeah.
it goes back to the AMA and the FDA, and
Right.
they want 10 years of studies with a completely randomized, placebo controlled, double blind
Yeah.
test, which is hard to do. I mean, it's hard to round up hundreds of people and have them participate in a medical study
Sure.
for 2 or 3 years. So but I felt that there was enough anecdotal information out there from people that actually had the therapy, and a lot of success stories. And if you look at podcasts and you seek out information on stem cell treatments, you're probably going to find 100 success stories to every one thing that was a little bit off. But one of the things that really got me was there was a podcast that was run on 60 Minutes Australia.
Hmm.
And this is a woman who was in her mid 30s, and she had multiple sclerosis. And she's living in Australia, and she's in a wheelchair. She can't get up, young woman, she's got kids. So she had a very prominent doctor from Australia, and an older gentleman, probably had been in practice for 40 years or more.
Yeah.
and he was trying to get the Australian government to treat her, with stem cells, and they refused to do it. I mean, it's
Huh.
just kind of like here, they haven't gone through, all of their testing, but like in my case, I mean, by the time they go through all the testing, I'm going to be 90, or
It's funny.
it'll
I
be,
mean, just to interject, COVID
yeah,
came, and the FDA had no problem approving a myriad of drugs developed in months by,
yeah,
and you've
exactly.
got stem cell research that's been going on for 15, 20 years, and they have a problem with that.
Yeah, and they've also approved lab grown meat, which I'm not lining up to get some lab grown meat. I mean,
Right.
it's crazy. But back to the story in
Yeah.
Australia. So this woman, so the doctor was on it. Her doctor in Australia was unable to get approval from the Australian government. So they actually flew her to Moscow. So she actually had the treatment in Moscow from a doctor who was specializing in stem cells for MS.
Huh.
And according to the story, I mean, she was, a few months later, she was jogging on the beach with her
That's
husband.
insane. Yeah.
I mean, this could be a big scam, but this was
No,
a
well, listen, you take
fairly,
the information that you get.
yeah, I mean, it was a fairly reputable, older gentleman was their physician, and I
Right.
don't think he's gonna. And it
No,
was 60 minutes. You would think that they would have
they
done some
probably vet the
research.
story a little better than most.
Exactly. Yeah,
Hey, I got to
exactly.
ask you, Steve. So
Yeah,
you have these ailments, this pain. I'm sure you tried other modalities,
yeah.
the traditional ones that we think of, right? Uh, Acupuncture, chiropractic care. Um, I'm sure you ran the gamut there with different supplements to reduce inflammation. None of that stuff was working.
Well, yeah, I take a bunch of supplements. I did try acupuncture mainly for my back. As I think I'm not a tower of patience. So
Right,
if I do acupuncture one time and I don't really feel that much from it, I'm not going back.
right.
The hips, I had multiple X-rays. The traditional doctors were not very helpful. They just told me I had a lot of arthritis in my back, and I had something called DISH, which is a type of osteoarthritis that throws off calcium deposits.
Okay.
And then I also I had my hips X-rayed probably about 2 years ago, and he just said, "Look, it's loaded with arthritis and bone spurs, and there's nothing we can do." And basically come back to me in 3 years and we'll rip your hip socket
We'll
open and
replace the damn thing.
put a metal bulb in there. And I mean, that was his recommendation.
Yeah,
So there was
no.
no meds, no therapy, nothing. So I
Right.
said, gee, this is just not cutting it. I mean, there's got to
No.
be something else. And that sort of like launched me into the stem cells. But interestingly enough, with the stem cells, I mean, I didn't know anyone personally that had the stem cell therapy. I do have some, like UFC and fight, professional fighting people that I know. One of which is Dan Severn. Dan was a champion UFC fighter, and I spoke with him, and he said, Steve, he goes, the people that have like tremendous damage will see minimal impact from it, but people that have just, sort of your run of the mill from, not so bad
Yeah.
to,
Fair to
maybe,
moderate. Yeah.
yeah, fair to moderate. He's seen a lot of people that have had major success, but one of his buddies, Don Fry, another champion UFC fighter, he was just so banged up and in a wheelchair and
Oh, geez.
just waited too long and everything was fused. And
Right.
but obviously I was not like in that kind of
No.
condition, but it was damn painful. I mean, if you're in a situation where every time you get up, you're in pain in your hips and your back, and you've got to wait 2 or 3 seconds before you can take a step. I mean, that's not good.
No, it's quality of life, right? I mean, who wants to,
Exactly.
you don't want to live like that.
Exactly.
Hey, before we get too far ahead of us, like, we throw around the word stem cell, like
Yep.
it's some magic potion. Like,
Right.
what the hell is it?
So again, I'm not a doctor, but I've done some research and I've talked to the people at the clinic where I went to for. They have several doctors that I spoke with in depth, and a stem cell is basically a cell, okay, but it's a non-differentiated cell, meaning that at the time it's a stem cell, it's not slated to be tissue or blood or nerves. It's basically a precursor for all of those things.
So
So
it,
they
it
typically,
hasn't yet made up its mind what kind of cell it's going to be.
exactly, yeah. So it can turn into almost anything. I'm not exactly sure of what the
Right.
things it can't turn into, but I think it can turn into cartilage, into nerves, into tissue, for sure. So, most of your stem cells really exist when you're a baby, and there was a big argument initially with the stem cells about fetal stem cells versus anything else. So there was the big debate was from an ethical point of view, you don't want to be taking fetuses to get stem cells out of them. But
Yeah, that could be
what
problematic. Right.
exactly? Yeah, nobody wants to do that. Nobody does it. So what they found is the umbilical tissue, which is just a complete throwaway. They'll go into hospitals and they'll test some of the women, and they can actually get the stem cells from the umbilical cord, and compensate the woman accordingly. And
Sure.
one of
Okay.
the interesting things is when you go for stem cell therapy, it's not like they have to find an umbilical cord for John Kelly. They're basically working off maybe two or three umbilical cords that they sourced maybe several years ago. And then they,
Oh,
they can just replicate those cells, and they take them through genetic testing to make sure that, there haven't been any mutations and everything's pristine
right.
and that the cells do what they want to do. But in the United States, I'm sure this is a question you would get to, but the problem in the United States is that most of this is prohibited because, again, of the FDA wanting test after test after test. So basically, what I think they will allow you to do is they will allow you to use your own stem cells. So that would mean me going to some medical facility here in the States
Yeah.
and getting a needle stuck in through my bone
Yeah.
and taking out bone marrow and then cultivating my own stem cells. So as a result, what you're getting 70-year-old
Yeah. I don't
stem
want
cells.
your stem cells, man. I want something
No,
that's a blank slate. I want
yeah,
something that
exactly.
hasn't been used yet.
Yeah, exactly. So my stem cells, your stem cells. I mean, if you're over 30, I mean, I don't think you want to be using your own stem cells. And the
Right.
other problem is if you're using your own, they can't really replicate it at any speed. So you'd have to come back like 3 years later when they had enough stem cells. Whereas if you go to outside the United States, you're getting umbilical cord sourced, pristine, super tested, analyzed stem cells, and you're getting hundreds of millions. In my case, I got 180 million stem cells, which you could never get, in the United States.
Right.
And the two ways you can get the stem cells is you can get either direct injections, like I got. So I got injections in my cervical column, which is the upper spine, around the
Mm-hmm.
neck, and then I got the lumbar, and then I got the sacroiliac joints, and I got the hips, both hips,
Right.
direct injections. And then they also do an IV. And the IV basically then you just have stem cells circulating throughout your body, and they will then, over the next 90 days, they will go to inflammation, or they'll go to problem areas, whether it's in your kidneys or your shoulders or whatever. They just seek out areas in your body that have problems, mainly through inflammatory signals, and that's what
Okay.
they gravitate towards. Yeah.
So you got two types, basically a very precise targeted area
Right.
with the injections, and then the IV kind of a total overall wellness for the entire body.
Yeah, I think it was like 3 hours of IV, with the stem cells, and then the injections. I mean, that was done. The place that I went to is called CPI, Cellular Performance Institute. I don't get paid by them. Just
Yeah,
nice people.
you're not on the
I,
payroll for CPI.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I heard about them through Joe Rogan. Joe was buddies with them, and they're met the two owners. I mean, Scotty Nelson and Ed Clay, two really great guys and very athletic guys. And but anyway, CPI owns their own hospital.
Oh wow.
So for the when you have injections in, like, say, the cervical area or the spine, they actually do that in their hospital.
Okay.
Some of the other injections they can do sort of in more of a clinic environment, but it's a very, very nice facility. It's in Tijuana,
All right.
of
So you
all
went down to
places.
Mexico,
Yeah. So
and I
basically,
know. I mean, I bust your balls a little bit. I go, oh yeah, let's go to Mexico, right? Because
yeah,
but it was you did all the research. This is a top-notch facility that people from all around the world go to.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in my sort of class, if you will, they basically take about 30 people a week. So it was a very, very interesting class, and I'll tell you a little bit about the people that were in the class.
Sure.
And the one that sort of popped up in terms of bringing you to mind and maybe doing this podcast is he was a 9/11 firefighter who was there on the ground during 9/11, and multiple injuries and problems and cancer, but super guy, a
Yeah.
lot younger than me, but all kinds of physical problems and PTSD. There are a number of couple of guys were Army Rangers. One guy was a Marine Corps Special Forces who was put in as one of the leading the bodyguard detachment for whoever we put in place to take over for Saddam Hussein. So these were serious warriors, Iraq, Afghanistan type guys that have numerous physical injuries and PTSD. Because as you know, John, I mean, PTSD, it's mental, but it's also not helped by having all kinds of,
Yeah.
physical pain and
No, they
not
kind of
being able.
it feeds that cycle.
It feeds it, exactly. So that's why I was thinking, well, gee, if there's some outlet for the physical pain, I mean, that can probably help you with
Sure.
the PTSD. But anyway, there were a couple of medical doctors, a couple of people like me, corporate guys or guys that own businesses, the military guys. There was a race car driver, Junior Strauss, who was like a world champion Indy race car. He brought his 90-year-old father who had issues with his ankle.
Huh.
And so the dad was there primarily for the ankle, but super group of guys, really extremely interesting. Um, Tijuana is 20 miles from San Diego. So you basically fly into San Diego, then they put you in their hotel, which is a beautiful Sheraton hotel on Shelter Island overlooking the marina in downtown San Diego. They pick you up at the hotel, they take you to the clinic, they put you in the Hyatt Place in Tijuana. Tijuana, the business district, is quite nice,
Hmm.
quite safe. My wife was walking around by herself. The restaurants are like restaurants you would see in Las Vegas or
Okay.
New York or
Okay.
California. I mean, like really good restaurants. The bad area is right around by the border, and that area is very bad. A lot of poverty, but super nice
Sure.
people,
Right.
helpful people. One of the funny things is the locals are telling me that Californians are now invading Tijuana, because you can rent an apartment in Tijuana for like $300 a month versus San
Yeah,
Diego, which is $3,000 a month.
that's
So it's kind of
hysterical.
it is kind of hysterical.
So
So
wait, mate, there might be an opportunity for you and I to buy up some apartment buildings in Tijuana.
I think so. Yeah, I think we need to follow up on it. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea. Holy smokes! So you're down in Tijuana. You're with quite an eclectic group of guys:
Yeah.
military, first responders, doctors, race car driver, all
Yep.
seeking this stem cell treatment to alleviate the different pain, right? Different
Yes.
ailments.
Yes.
What's the treatment like, Steve? So you're down there, you're at the hotel, they pick you up, they bring you to the clinic. Can you like walk us? You were there for a week, were you not?
Yes. Yeah. So this is one of the things I wanted to point out, because out of all of the podcasts I looked at, I still did not have like a good prior understanding of what I'd be going through. And of course, every medical facility that you would choose, they're all going to be slightly different. But
Sure.
I thought basically you're going to go down there, you're going to get some injections, you might rest up the next day, and then you're going home. And that's it. And then I can have a glass, I can have a bottle of wine over the next couple of nights. And
I'm glad you corrected yourself. You said a glass and then you
yeah,
stopped
yeah.
yourself and said a bottle, which is I appreciate
Exactly.
the
I like
transparency,
to drink
brother.
wine. I'm half Italian, so my
Right.
grandmother told me it keeps you young. So, but
No, it's
anyway,
important.
but a total misconception of the preparation, the treatment, and then the after sort of therapy that you have to go through. So, prior to going down there, they really don't want you drinking alcohol for, I mean, a week, if you
Right.
can do it. I probably refrained for maybe 5 days before going down there. Because the problem is, if you have alcohol in your bloodstream and then they give you stem cells and the stem cells are circulating in your bloodstream, the alcohol in your bloodstream will actually kill the stem cells that are
Right.
also circulating in your bloodstream. I think it's not so much with the ones that are injected into a particular joint, because they're sort
Sure.
of like captured within the joint, but certainly the IV stem cells would be destroyed by alcohol. So you go down there. They give you a little intro in terms of what to expect, what to do. I actually they do MRIs. So I had on the first day I had 4 MRIs, and I had a complete panel of blood work. And
Wow.
then then the second day, you go back and the doctor will actually take you through your entire MRI and all your blood work and what's wrong, what's right, what we think we can improve, this, that, and the other thing. It turns out my actual spine was not as bad as I thought it was.
Okay.
And as I suspected, the hips were actually in worse shape. And you could see on the MRI where there was, osteoarthritis and bone spurs and all that
Sure.
kind of stuff. So on the second day, you're reviewing everything. They're going to put you on an NAD drip. So NAD is short for an unpronounceable medical name, and it's basically a molecule in your body that helps control the mitochondria and your metabolism. So it helps regulate the cellular function in your body. So
Okay.
this NAD drip, I think we got it 3 times while we were down there for like 3 hours a shot. And that, it's great stuff. I mean, you can get NAD in like pill supplement form,
Yeah.
but it's not the same as getting it through an IV and getting all of the the magnitude and the
Right. So
volume of NAD.
that happens on day 3.
That happens actually on day 2,
Oh,
and
wow.
you're getting that 3 times. You're also getting you're going over to a hypobaric chamber, And my fear was that, I'm going to be in like a coffin and I'm going to
Right.
freak out. I'm not super claustrophobic, but obviously
Yeah, I don't want to be put in a box, you know.
yeah, exactly. But this thing, we were calling it, we were singing the Yellow Submarine. So
Ah,
I think it could fit 12 guys. We
oh,
had,
it's a big unit then.
yeah, it was huge, 6 or 7 guys. I mean, you actually didn't, I'm 6'1", you didn't even have to bend over to
Oh
get
wow.
into it. It's huge, very pleasant. And you put a mask on and it pumps pure oxygen into your nostrils, and it's pressurized. So the thing that they're trying to accomplish with all of these therapies prior to getting the injections is to just get your body oxygenated and healthy and get your system ready to receive the stem cells. So
Wow.
so the hyperbaric chamber multiple times, the NAD drip multiple times. Then they did ozone drips, IV drips, and then they also did something called a Myers cocktail. Myers cocktail is just every vitamin that you could think of, in high concentrations pumped into your body through an IV.
Oh wow.
And then they also do something called PEMF, which is a magnetic pulse thing. And I had that, and you can use it all throughout the day. There's sort of like a little kiosk where you just go over and you tell them what you want treated. People
Sure.
were typically getting lower back, or in my case, I was getting the neck up here. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, that PMF thing. I mean, it doesn't give you permanent relief, but it gives you some damn good relief, I would say.
What is it, Steve? Like what is it? Is it like a chair or something you lay in or a bed you lay in? Like what is it?
Yeah, it's like an electronic box that has either two sort of diode type things that they can treat your neck, and then it's got another thing that's sort of like a harness, or what you will, that you can like lay back on.
Okay.
And so this harness has the medical impulses going through it. And so I did that for my neck, and I think the treatment is like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and that really felt good. And
Huh.
you can buy these things. I mean, they're available on
Okay.
Amazon. I mean, I don't, you probably have to spend some money to get a really good one. Like this
Right.
was clinical grade. I mean, it was probably a $5,000 machine, but I mean,
Right.
I did see that they have them, and I thought the PEMF magnetic pulse thing was pretty effective. The NAD and the ozone and the Myers cocktail, I'm assuming that was effective, but
Right.
it's kind of hard to tell. I will say with the NAD, that's pretty powerful, and that makes you kind of feel nauseous when you're getting that. And I mean, everybody that was taking it were looking at each other and we said, "Gee, am I going to pass out?" I mean,
Right.
it's not real comfortable. But what they can do is they can slow down the drip. So if they slow down the drip, it's a lot easier. But then
Right.
then instead of 3 hours, you're there for 4 hours.
Okay.
But all these things, I think they've got 6 or 7 doctors and 40 nurses. So they've all collaborated on what are the best preparatory things to do to get you ready for the stem cell. So I think the actual stem cell injection was on Wednesday. So
Okay.
that would have been day 3. So now I've had the benefit of all these, therapies.
The
So
hyperbaric chamber, the drips, the
yeah, PEMF.
cocktails of vitamin
Yeah,
infusion. I mean, okay.
yeah,
So you're like optimized to receive the stem cells now.
yeah, yeah. So with the stem cells, they put you out for the treatment. And I think the
Okay.
main reason they put you out is when they're injecting your spine, they don't want you to move.
Right.
So, they don't want you like sneezing and like hitting the
Yeah.
wrong thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't think it's really for pain. I think they just don't want you to move.
They want you
Uh,
completely immobilized. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. For the hips, they actually did the hip while I was awake,
Oh.
and the hip is a painful injection because they actually,
Got your attention, brother?
yes, they actually have to pop like the hip capsule which is like a capsule of cartilage or something. And I
Yeah,
mean,
that sounds like fun. It sounds like a
that's
fun
not
time.
fun. That's not freaking fun. And the needle, the needle is like this. It's
Oh,
a long
bro.
needle. So
Oh my
I said,
God.
"Oh my God." So I had that done.
Yeah.
And then the next day, which was
Hey, did
Thursday.
you wish you were unconscious for the hips?
Yeah, I mean, the hip was, hey, you know what? I mean, it's bearable. I mean,
Right.
it's when you get a needle in your arm for blood work. I mean, it's probably 50 times worse than that.
I was
It's
gonna
just,
say, what's the
yeah,
multiplier? Because that's
yeah.
nothing.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, it lasts. They're done in 5 minutes, so
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
not crying or
You
asking.
weren't sobbing. Why did I
Yeah,
do this? This is this.
yeah,
Oh, woe is me. All right. I would
yeah,
expect you to take
yeah.
that like a man. All right.
Yeah. So then the next day, which is Thursday, so now we're on day 4.
Yeah.
Then they do the IV drip of the stem cells, and I think
Okay.
that
So
was,
Wednesday was the injections to the sites, and
yeah,
now this
yeah,
is the IV stem cells that are going to go throughout your whole body.
right. Now I probably should back up. So the third day, which is the Wednesday, so after you've had injections in the joints, depending upon where they are. So if they're in like your cervical, upper spinal column, or your lumbar, or anything to do with the spine, they want you to stay over in their hospital overnight. So they actually
Okay.
own a hospital, so you're there overnight. You got a private room, and actually the co-owner, Scotty Nelson, I got a knock on the door at like 9 o'clock, and Scotty's in with a backpack, and he goes, "Hey, Steve, how you doing? And everything all right? Can I get you anything?" And just really caring,
Huh.
delightful people.
Very attentive.
But I'll tell you though, so the pain afterwards, I had virtually no pain in my spine, my neck, my lumbar, my sacroiliac, but the hips were killing me.
Mm.
So the hips, I could barely stand up out of bed. So
Ooh.
I could stand up, I could hobble into the bathroom,
Yeah.
because of course I'm not going to call a nurse
No.
to help me go to the
No.
bathroom, right?
No. No.
So despite it being a not good thing to do, I'm getting up on my own power,
Sure.
and I'm stumbling to the wall and bracing myself. But yeah, very, very difficult. And I would say for 3 nights in a row, the hips, it was hard to walk. I mean, you could
Gotcha.
walk, but very, very hard. But surprisingly enough, the rest of the body, the spinal stuff, I didn't really feel anything from that. Guys that had knees done, knees were probably the most painful
Oh
in
wow.
terms of the injection, and in terms of the flare up, and in terms of the recovery time.
Oh wow.
So my hips, I was able to walk around better than like one of the guys. His name was Lance. He was a ranger, probably 30 years younger than me, and he had the knees done. And man, he was hobbling around for until from Wednesday to Friday. Friday he was still really hobbling around. Where Friday I was sort of getting around. I mean, not
Gotcha.
great, but I was getting around. So different people have different reactions. I would say, generally speaking, they'll tell you that hips and knee and shoulder are probably among the most painful.
Right.
The spine, I think, is less painful because you're not, with the spine, I mean, it's not impacting your ability to walk per se.
Sure.
It's not under direct pressure, so unless you're
Right.
jumping
Right.
up
Right.
and
Not
down.
really like a moving joint per se. Right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, and then, they take you back uh, from the clinic. I went back. Let's see, when did I go back? I went back late Friday,
Okay.
and I stayed at the hotel overnight, and then flew back from San Diego Saturday morning. And by Saturday morning, I was able to walk maybe 65% of normal.
Okay.
So I could walk slowly, but um, the $1 million question that everybody's gonna want to ask me, which I'll kind of get to now, because you don't want to keep people hanging out too long, but we can circle back to it, is, did it work?
Right.
And
Right.
I got to tell you something. The short answer is yes. Now they'll tell you, the doctors will tell you that you're not going to feel anything, any improvement for 2 months. You should start feeling something, but really 3 months is when everything has really settled in. But John, I swear to you, within, I would say within the first week, there was a very, very significant improvement in my hips,
Right.
to the point where I can sit up, I can stand up, no pain in my hips. I don't have to wait 2 seconds before I take a step. I can take a step. So I mean, I would say within the first week,
Yeah.
it felt like a 90% improvement. But
Nice.
I'm almost afraid to say that, because
No. Well,
I probably shouldn't be. But
how much do you think? Because we know this, right? You know this. You're a very learned man. How much do you think of that, given the information that they gave you, that normally 2 to 3 months? How much do you think of that as psychosomatic? That your brain is actually making that a reality for you.
I think zero, because my pain in my hip was so pronounced
Okay.
that I mean, I just don't think my placebo effect mentality is strong enough to override, severe osteoarthritis in my hips
I
and
got you.
go
Okay.
from
Fair
painful to no
answer.
pain. One of the things that they did, which is kind of interesting, and which is an added benefit, I think, for this podcast, is they set up a WhatsApp group.
Okay.
So my phone is beeping, every 20 minutes with that entire group, my class of stem cell people, which is roughly 30 people. So they're all talking about their prognosis and their issues. And a lot of people have had flare ups. They
Okay.
said that when you go back home, you can get fever episodes, you can get swelling episodes. So I would say most of the episodes were from people that had knee work done.
Okay.
But interestingly enough, when I was getting, for all of the treatment, you kind of sit in the same lazy boy with the IV thing next to you. And the guy
Yeah.
that I was sitting next to was a super nice guy by the name of Dino. And Dino had, he was treated previously for stem cells, and he was treated in Panama, which is another well-known clinic in
Right.
Panama. So he had his knees done like 3 years ago. And I said to him, so he was there at this new place in CPI in Tijuana to get other parts of his body treated. But I said, okay, so you're here, so it must have worked. How did the stem cells work on your knees? And he said, man, he said, completely cured. He
Oh
said,
wow.
he said game changer. Knees were a mess. Knees were perfect. But so knees are painful in terms of the injection, and is probably takes you the most time to recover for, which makes sense because it's probably even more of a load bearing
Yeah.
thing than
Yeah.
your
I mean,
hip.
that's you don't
You know,
move unless your knee bends.
yeah, they're bending more than your hips. Your
Sure.
hips certainly rotate a little bit, but your knees are sort of like your
Right.
first responder in a way in terms of mobility. So yeah, he said it was a game changer. But the guys that are chiming in now with the fever flare ups and the knees swelling up
Yeah.
after they came back home, like a week later, is more of the knee people.
I got you.
So I think that my prognosis, even though I was one of the older people, I think, was the least severe out of most of the people, but there was nothing severe. So in other words, out of 30 people in our group, I think we only had maybe 5 that reported some flare-ups.
Okay.
And the flare-ups didn't last a couple of days. You put ice on it.
Yeah.
They've got, phone numbers that you call to talk directly to a doctor and stuff.
Nice.
So no horror stories,
Right.
no
What
no
kind of results?
rejection.
What
The
kind of
stem
results are
cell,
you expecting, Steve?
I was expecting mild improvement in everything.
Yeah.
So in terms of my neck, the cervical and my lower back, I have to reserve judgment in terms of giving you a prognosis right now because it's just kind of hard to tell.
Yeah.
I think there's an improvement. I just need to wait a little bit longer. But as I said, repeatedly now, the hips were, that was the thing that was most notable.
Wow.
And in like 8 days, I'm telling you, like I don't have any pain in my hips now. Now my hips don't feel like I'm gonna put 300 pounds and do squats. I mean,
Right.
I'm not going to do that. I mean, they still feel like an old guy's hip, but in terms of that direct pain
You don't have that
associated
pain.
with standing up and not being able to even take a step right away, to have to
Yeah.
like stop wobbling, that is completely gone. I mean, it's
That's
gone.
awesome.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's nuts. So
So
one of the other things that I didn't really understand in
yeah.
terms of like the length of the treatment and this whole process with the IVs and stuff, I didn't know any of that. I
Right.
guess if I asked them most of those direct questions, they would have told me, but
Sure.
they don't really volunteer like all of that information. I mean, it's kind of in the fine print, but I thought everything was over in like day one. I didn't realize
Right.
that.
Right. It sounds like that this is it's a well thought out, very methodical approach to giving you this treatment. It's not
Yes.
something that's just hey, show up, here's a shot, jump back on a plane and go home.
No, no, you're there for a whole week. You see 2 or 3 different doctors. You see a cardio doctor. You see, an ortho. I
Yeah.
mean, very, very, meticulous, very well thought out, very upbeat, very nice, nurturing people. I'll tell you what, I'm digressing here a little bit, but Mexican people get a bad rap with our immigration fiasco. But I'll tell you what, I mean, every person I encountered, from the
Right.
hotel to the restaurants to the nurses and the staff, the drivers, oh my
Right.
God, like what nice people.
Yeah.
Just like a spirit of helpfulness.
Sure.
So very, very, very pleasant feeling. But now, what they tell you is they say don't do anything for like 3 weeks, like do nothing,
Right.
and then they tell you to do physical therapy. Now here's one of the weaknesses I think in the recommendations is they tell you to do physical therapy, but they will also tell you that there are not many physical therapists in the United States that are going to understand stem cells.
Mm.
So if you go to your typical PT guy
Right.
who is really motivated to get you walking or jumping or skipping as fast as possible, that's not what you want with stem cells.
Ah.
So with stem cells, you want more like slow manipulation, so you're not causing the stem cells so you're not causing other areas of inflammation that you don't want treated. You want
So
the stem cells to stay like where they were injected. So you
movement
have to
and
be very
activity without inflammation.
exactly, yeah. So in other words, if you were to go into the gym and start doing heavy squats and do like your old routine and stuff, you would be causing inflammation in stuff that's not really broken that you
Right.
didn't
Right.
mean to
Right.
get
Right. Right.
treated, but you'd have stem cells going, to other places in your body. So,
Wow.
so the physical therapy part of it, I thought was a little bit of a weakness in that they say get physical therapy, But by the way, there's nobody out there that really knows what to do. So,
Yeah.
find somebody that has good credentials, and then like explain to them what you went through, and then maybe they can help you. With me, what I'm doing is I'm doing YouTube research, and I'm doing mild stretching.
Yeah.
And I think I've been in the physical fitness game long enough that
Yeah.
I
You're
kind
not a
of,
novice, bro. You
yeah,
know what you need. You're going to go for a walk. You're going to stretch.
exactly.
You're going to stay active, but you're not going to start kicking a bag and doing all that bullshit. You're just
Right,
going to
exactly.
nice and easy, man. Nice and
Yeah,
easy.
and tennis, tennis, probably I'll take the full 90
Listen,
days.
I'm sure everybody at the tennis club is extremely appreciative of you not being there for 90 days. There'll
Exactly.
be no fights, there'll be no bullying. I mean, this
Exactly.
is, you're gonna have to go back in 90 days and reassert yourself as the dominant player in the league. So
Exactly.
I want to show up for that match. Um,
Exactly.
let me ask you. So
Yeah,
if you don't mind me asking,
sure.
um, you're Steve Williams.
Hmm.
You've got Steve Williams kind of money. What's the affordability of this treatment? Because it sounds like it's a it's an option that's solving a problem.
Yeah, I think so. What I got was I got like the full treatment. I didn't get knees or shoulders because knees and shoulders weren't, really bothering me.
Right.
So, but I got probably one of the more extensive treatments that you can get. So my treatment was right about $30,000. So that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it is.
So, but if you went in like just for knees,
What if like John Kelly wants to go and get his knees done because I've got screws and everything else and arthritis and
yeah,
what's the John Kelly plan?
I think a John Kelly plan for like knees only, and then you could probably negotiate with them. Like, I don't know that you need 3 NAD
Right.
sessions or 3 hyperbaric sessions. So knees only. I mean that's probably going to be 5 to 10. I would think.
That's affordable, man. That's affordable.
Yeah, it's affordable. I mean, it really is. And the other thing with like my injections, not all my injections were in the disc. Some of my injections were in what they call the facet joints. So if you look at like a vertebrae, like a skeleton thing, you see the disc, but then there's also these other sort of like flaring things, that bony structures that come out that sort of like bend with your spine,
Okay.
and those things become like calcified and deformed from arthritis. So they basically inject the discs and the facet joints. And here's something really interesting before I forget. So when it comes to disc, I was thinking, well, why would you get injected in a disc? If your disc is already herniated and is already leaked out,
Hmm.
why would you put new material in there? It's just going to leak out anyway. So the answer to that is they put in stem cells, but along with the stem cells, they put in some substance, some concoction, I forget what they call it, but it basically causes the stem cell fluid to turn into a gel,
Hmm.
and it causes the wall of the disc then to harden into like a fibrous kind of thing. So it's basically like injecting like a disc mold into your disc. So it'll puff up the disc and it'll seal the outer edges. So it's
Huh.
not going to leak out.
That's
It's
interesting.
really pretty crazy. I wish, medical, thank you, medical profession, for getting me to have fusion.
Right.
Fusion is a freaking nightmare. I mean, this all could have been avoided. So when you do fusion, I've lost mobility. So I'll never
Right.
be able to touch my toes, which doesn't sound like a big thing. But if I want to pick a spoon up off the ground, I got to bend down on one knee.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, no
kind of a
doubt.
pain in the neck. So a lot of you, if you're getting near where you might have to have fusion, this could be a good thing for you. But
Good alternative. Yeah, man.
yeah, I mean, when I was on the phone with them, I kind of said, look, this is not a conversation about saving money. It's a conversation about like the best treatments that you have available. But I think if you were on a budget and you wanted a specific area, I think they could probably cut out some things that are not absolutely necessary.
Yeah,
If you
you got the executive package.
yeah, yeah, exactly right. And like I said, I mean, there were some military guys there. There was, the firefighter.
Yeah.
These are not wealthy people. But obviously you have to have some kind of money. But just a great experience. I mean, really, really amazing.
You do it again.
Well, I think I would. It's a little bit of an arduous experience in that by arduous, I mean, I like to relax with a glass of wine every night. So
Yeah.
not drinking wine for like 90 days, not playing tennis for 90 days, or doing my boxing routine once a week for 90 days. That's an interruption in my life. So, the therapy of 1 week, even though it was a beautiful environment, they actually have a huge room. So you're sitting on these lazy boys with the IV thing next to you. You're
Yeah.
looking out on the Atlantic Ocean, great, interesting guys around you, guys and women around you. But it's a disruption, and it's a
Right.
long plane ride. So yeah, I would do it. He said that so I was in the van going back and forth at hotel. I was with their chief cellular medical doctor,
Mhm.
Francisco Silva. He's from Chile, so he was able to provide a lot more information. I asked him about kidneys because they do stem cell treatment for kidneys, primarily in India. India is doing a lot of this.
Huh.
Of course, not in the United States, but
No.
many people, if you have high blood pressure or if you have type 2 diabetes, your kidneys will suffer. So when you're in your 60s, your kidneys may be impaired. So they're starting at CPI, they're starting kidney injections, he said, over the summer of this year.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of cool. And theoretically, what would happen is your kidneys are comprised of all little blood vessels, and so the stem cells would repair any
Mm.
broken blood vessels that are in your kidneys. They also put me on low dose Cialis,
Hmm.
like 2.5 milligrams of Cialis, it's like an ED treatment, but he said it's very good for like just general blood flow. So
Huh.
2.5 milligrams is very, very low. You
Sure.
take it every day. I talked to one of the medical doctors who's actually an Army physician who's now in private practice in California. And he said, yeah, he goes, I take it every day. He goes, it's great for blood flow. It helps blood flow in your organs and some of those like little vascular areas within your kidneys. And
Nice.
actually my blood pressure went down.
Hmm.
So I attribute that to the Cialis. They said it'll take your blood pressure down a little bit, as well.
Right.
So just generally, good health, good supportive group. You
It
got the
sounds like you
WhatsApp.
had a great experience.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I want to, I mean, I kind of feel funny telling people that, it worked after like 8 days. I mean, that
Right.
almost sounds like criminal, like, sounds like BS. I mean, it just doesn't sound right.
Mhm.
But, what do am I going to lie to you? I mean,
No, I
you're
mean, that's
asking,
your perspective. That's your
yeah. And I mean,
experience.
and it's not an opinion. It
Right.
worked. It's
Right.
not an opinion. I mean, I went from severe pain, and then, as I said, after I had the injections, it was
Yeah.
even worse pain. Until it settles down. But I think that pain went away after about 5 days, and,
Right.
then it just. But I mean, they had. I think I had 40 million stem cells in my two hips.
Okay.
So these are like little nanobots. They're like little freaking nano robots that
Hmm.
go into your joints and start rebuilding stuff.
Oh, wow.
And I think the more inflammation you have, the more they get to work, faster.
Wow.
So very cool. No rejection stuff, which in my early research I was very concerned about, like immuno response and rejection. And apparently these stem cells, which are called MSC, mesenchymal, M is in Michael, S is in Stephen, C is in cat, okay, MSC, mesenchymal stem cells. These are the very sort of primal stem cells. They don't have a rejection marker.
Oh, wow.
So, hey, people get blood transfusions every day of the week. I mean, particularly your first responder group. I'm sure, many of them had blood transfusions. Well, if you get a blood transfusion, I mean, guess what? You're getting stem cells.
Hmm.
Now they're not going to be as pristine as these. So there's nothing to fear, at least from what I
Right.
know. There's no rejection response. They've treated, I don't know how many people in the world have had stem cell treatments, but I would think it would be in the hundreds of thousands, at
Sure.
this point. And the primary areas where you go to Mexico has several places. I went to CPI, Cellular Performance Institute. There's a place in Panama, Costa Rica, India, New Zealand does a little bit, but the it seems like the countries that are closer to us, like the Central American, South American,
Sure.
actually Colombia has a big facility as well. They seem to be more cutting edge. Places like India and New Zealand have more of the FDA syndrome where they do a little bit, but they don't do as much as they could, or they're
Sure.
actually going on a slower track. So
Right. Wow.
and these companies, they are working with the FDA on putting trials together, and they do want it to go mainstream. But it sounds like a joke. I mean, it sounds like too good to be true.
Right.
Where these stem cells can turn into like almost anything. So
No, I mean, what little I've learned and know from talking with you, it all makes sense. Um,
yeah,
and if it's if it provides relief and adds quality of life, um, I think it's definitely an option that needs to be explored.
yeah. They also have they tell you about this when you go there. They actually have a package, and it's scalp, facial, and penis.
Nice.
And you can either buy the bundle or you can get one at a time. And I didn't
That's hysterical.
opt for any of it, but there were guys that got scalp, guys that got the facial. The facial people that got the facial looked really rough after that. I mean, your face is like all blotchy and stuff.
Yeah.
And but it's got application. I mean, it grows tissue, it grows blood vessels. So
Yeah.
the problem, if you're losing your hair, I mean, that's basically a condition where follicles are dying and your blood flow in your
Mm.
scalp is not what it should be. So this is all regrowing, connecting blood vessels where they've died out over the years. And so it's really
See, with
it's
my
really
luck, Steve, they would
yeah.
confuse the stem cells and the injection in my head. I'd have a dick growing out of the top of my head,
Yeah,
and
that could happen.
that
I've heard
I'm deathly afraid of that, bro.
exactly. Yeah, you don't want that to happen, John. So
Make sure they use the right vial.
I tried not to go there, but I want
Holy
to give you
smokes! No,
a complete
I appreciate
rundown.
you
And
serving me up a softball.
yeah, no,
Oh my god, that's too
but
funny.
yeah, no, great place. We probably should have a follow up.
Yeah,
After
I'd
the
like to. Yeah,
90
I
days,
most certainly do a
and
follow up.
but I'm telling you what, buddy. I mean, my hips, 8 freaking days.
I know
And I'm popping up out of the chair
that's
with no
crazy.
pain.
No
I mean,
pain.
that's not psychosomatic.
No,
That's
you
not.
were you. I mean, I I see you every week, and you were not a happy camper, man. You were in a good amount of pain there, and it's nice to
Yep.
see that you've got some relief there. Anything you want to add before we wrap, man? I really appreciate you taking the time, Steve. This was a lot of information that, quite honestly, people just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the main thing I wanted to get across is that this is not a scary, super risky procedure. You need to be your own health advocate. I mean, I can tell you a lot of horror stories with, where, I was on type 2 diabetes medicine for 17 years with marginal results. I just changed my freaking diet to keto. I went from an A1C of 6.7 to 5.0 in 90 days. So that's going from like, not so good to fantastic in 90 days just by changing my diet, completely off of medication. So you have to be your own advocate. You have to ask questions. The AMA is so insular. If it's not in their immediate playbook, they're not going to recommend it.
Right.
I went to an orthopedic doctor 3 years ago, had the x-rays. You've got osteoarthritis and bone spurs all throughout your hips. Well, what do I do? Nothing. See me in 3 years when it's really unbearable, and we'll tear your hip apart, and we'll hammer in a piece of metal. I mean, come on, give me a break. I mean, what would you rather have?
Maybe there might be a better way. How about that?
Yeah, maybe like an injection,
right?
With pain for a couple days and then, immediate results. So, yeah, I mean, so I want to tell people not to be afraid of it, to do your own research, talk to, different sources. And I think in life, as you know, whether it's in business or relationships or your own health, sometimes you just have to take some well-researched risks that were preceded by a lot of investigation, not analysis paralysis, but reasonable investigation and research, and then go out and get some treatments and live the healthiest life that you possibly can, which is what I'm doing. I got a good-looking wife. You've met little Barbie. I got to keep up with her, man.
Little shout out to little Barbie.
Exactly.
Oh my God, you're killing me.
Yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen, Steve Williams, man, thank you, brother, for sharing your experience on that trip. Wealth of information, and I love the fact that you did this research and then you pulled the trigger on it, man, and you're feeling 10 times better than you ever thought you would, man. So thanks again for your time, brother.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, John. Peace and love, brother.
Yeah, peace and love.
Yeah,
and that is that, man.